Blessings, blessings, blessings. Let's get those threefold blessings all over us, deep, deep, deep as the ocean. We want all the blessings flowing and growing. Welcome back to Running on Reiki, and thank you for joining the second episode. I'm so happy for all the people that joined for the first episode, and I have a special treat for you today as I'm going to be in the present moment channeling a high priest light being who is wanting to come through and share some higher wisdom with us. If you can hear the background music, I have some meditation music playing with whales and dolphin sounds, and that's because we're going to be taking a journey with them today and hearing more about what these superior light beings have to teach us and the energy that they want to hold for us. And that's going to come through the words of a most beautiful high priest who works from another dimension, but he did live on Earth until just fairly recently. In fact, he was a bit of a famous person. I'm not going to say who his name is because he said to me, he's one of my guides, and he said to me that I would like to be the first interdimensional guest on your podcast. And I said, okay, well, I'm only on episode 2. Wouldn't you like a larger audience? And he said, it's not about that. It's about getting the energy out there. So, but he's not really into, he was not shy in real life, let me say that. But he's not interested in me saying who he was in real life because he does not want that to become the focus. It's about the message he's saying. So that's what we have in store today. And before we get there, and there's a lot to come, let me just say that I would like to thank the Anchor app, which is how I am making this podcast today. Anchor is actually a free app and gives anybody the access to create their own podcast and to use their voice to raise the frequency of planet Earth. This is so important, whatever way you get your voice out there, because in higher dimensions, the beings are telepathic and they don't use words. Their communication is pure. They can actually read each other's minds. They can communicate without using a word system. And they don't have impure intentions or any type of sense of worry about what people are knowing what they're thinking, because everything that radiates from them is pure. But on Earth, we probably would not want to telepathically speak because it's hard for us to control our lower thoughts and emotions. And I don't say lower in a judgmental way. Here we use words, and we are supposed to be learning the lesson, Spirit says, of how to use them, how to yield them in a beneficial way for the goodness of all, how to monitor them, how to self-control and regulate them. So let's use our words when we're making a podcast or we're talking to somebody, when we're writing, any way that we use words. Let's be mindful of using them in a way that raises the vibration. And this is a message for myself as well as anyone who's listening. We all have slip-ups because we are in the human state where we're not using our words in the highest, purest way. So creating a podcast is a great way to learn how to be truthful, but to use your words in a way that creates a sense of expansion and curiosity and wonderment for other people. And everybody doesn't have to believe all of your words, but you do need to speak them at times, especially when they are bubbling up to the surface, and you know that there's an energy behind them that needs to be released. And that's a good segue for how I came to using this podcast of Running on Reiki to talk to our special guest, who's a high priest who resides in Telos, below the surface of the earth under Mount Shasta, which is a real mountain in the state of Washington. That is where he resides now, as he has passed over the veil in the last couple of years. But when he was on planet Earth, he was a fairly visible, let's say, creative person in the creative arts. He was a stage person, a showman, a poet. Did I know him personally? No. I was in his presence because of the fact that he was an entertainer. And there was an energy about him that I noticed the very first time that I was in the same room with him that was very different, that was very stand out, that was very quietly charismatic, even though he was vivaciously charismatic. There was still, what I mean by that, a gentle quietness, a goodness to his energy. So when I was thinking about this second episode, my thought was that maybe I would use the next 7 episodes to go through each chakra and channel some messages from spirit that go deeper than what the surface things that most of us that are involved in really pursuing our spiritual awakening, we have an understanding of the basics of each chakra. So that was my intention. But as all things in life, what happened was spirit, if you pay attention, will come in and say, this is where the focus perhaps needs to be for you. It is never dictated, so I'm kind of hesitant to say it that way, but the nudge was there. And I was told by this guide, who we're going to get into talking with him today, that he would like to be a guest on this podcast. And how do you say no to something like that? Even if you don't feel completely capable of doing it, I have found over the course of my life that when spirit shows up and asks me to look at something in a certain way, to pursue it, to listen a little deeper, I do not hesitate but to follow those nudges, because they always bring me, even if I am scared on an ego-based level, they bring me deeper into myself, deeper into understanding my purpose, the purpose of Gaia, planet Earth, why I'm here, why we're all here. So I follow the nudges. So I'm going to backtrack this timetable a little bit to the very beginning, when this high priest from Telos, who works with the whales, first came to me, and that way I can follow the flow of the story. But one thing that I do want to say to you is, never tell yourself, if you're feeling anyone coming to you from the other side of the veil, whether it be somebody who is famous in this life, whether it's a loved one, family member of yours, whether it is an ascended master like Jesus or the Buddha, do not doubt when these things happen to you, because if you do that, you will miss a really beautiful opportunity to evolve your spiritual path. We are all connected. We are all one, and we are all equal in spiritual eyes. So when you limit yourself, that is simply a choice that you are making. When you stop putting other people, other beings on a pedestal, and you open yourself up to the vastness, the vast layering of the universe, which is eternal and endless, you really begin to free yourself, to have more opportunities, to see life in a bigger way than just what maybe dogma you have learned growing up in a particular religion. Not that the religions are wrong or bad, or what you read in a famous book by an author who is a bestseller. We have to stop limiting ourselves to thinking that something is only valuable if it has a high reach, a high dollar amount attached to it, a high amount of fame, visibility, etc. And right now, this high priest, which I want to call him by his human name, and I'm scared that I'm going to do that because I don't want to go against his wishes, which is to not name him, because then your mind goes to another way of looking at the story. So let me stop this for a second because I want to tune in and ask him what he wants me to call him. Okay, I had to stop the recording so I could tune in. He's telling me to call him Agu. So we're going to go with that. So backtracking, let me preface this story by saying that when I started practicing Reiki 5 years ago, I'm not even sure now. It's been a while. I think all time has stopped for us during the pandemic. So I have to think about those things. It really doesn't matter because as soon as I started practicing and became certified, worked with a Reiki master teacher at Reiki 1 level, all of my psychic abilities and gifts opened. And it happened at Reiki 1, not at Reiki 3. So again, we have to stop looking at things like, we have to come to the conclusion of something for it to be a success, or you only get there through a certain education or level, or et cetera, et cetera. And he's saying to me now that is why when I said to him, why would you want to show up on my podcast? I just started it and I only have minimal listeners. He said, I am not interested in how many listeners you have. I'm interested in your heart, your openness to actually listen to my message and to spread my message. And I know that even in life, that when I wrote a song or sang a song, that I was only reaching a certain audience. And even my total audience, I did not reach all of them on every song or at every concert as far as them resonating with it. But I wrote the song because I was in conjunction with spirit, and that needed to come through me in the moment, those words, that rhythm, that instrumentation. So I am asking you to channel my message, and I know it will reach the people that it's meant to reach. It's spirit's job to disseminate that, the physicality of the energy that we creatives conjure. He's saying to me, we, the creatives, the painters, the artists, the gardeners, the writers, the poets, the singers, the musicians, we just need to create. We need to allow the flow, like the whales and the dolphins are all about being in their flow. And then trust, we must trust. As they trust the ocean, we must trust Mother, Father, God, Source, whatever you want to call that which is your creator. We must trust that our energy, that is their energy, will then be disseminated to the public, to the humans that need to hear it in a particular moment. So he's saying to me right now, I trust you. I trust your ability. I'm attracted to your level of care and concern to show up, to keep showing up and speaking for the light and not worrying about who it's reaching or how many it's reaching or how it's reaching or if you're saying the perfect thing. The important thing is that you care and you're showing up. And that's a lesson for all of us, he's saying, with any aspect of our life path. So right now he's showing me a visual of a small child, and he's saying it's the same thing as when you dearly love a child or a grandchild or an infant. You will focus your entire attention on an entire day or every day that you are the caretaker of that child. And you don't worry that you're not getting a lot of other things done, or that everybody doesn't see and that you don't get credit for what you're doing for this child. When you're a caretaker of a child or any other thing that you love dearly, you just show up quietly, silently, in trust. And you don't say, but I could be doing so many more other things, productive things, big things. You don't say that, he's saying, because you know that the love, the deep, beloved love you have for this child, whether it's a human child or it is a project that is a baby, is so great that is what is the most important thing you could be doing in that moment. Just loving it, just holding it, just cherishing it, just enjoying the interaction with it. Whew, okay. That's really, really beautiful. Let's all take a nice deep breath. And every time that I say breathe in this podcast, know that is my sign to you to take a nice, slow, deep breath in and a nice, slow, deep breath out so that you can absorb and integrate the channeled wisdom that just came through in the previous segment. So I'm going to channel the words for the Reiki symbols right now, since words are what I have available to me, since I'm doing a human podcast. If I didn't speak and I was just doing an hour of this telepathically, probably everybody or almost everybody would turn it off in the first 30 seconds and think that it was dead air. We are human and we do need to use words. So again, one of the big messages that is coming through today is with this channeling right now, from both spirit, the light, and that encompasses all of our spirit guides, all of the higher starseed light beings from other dimensions, all of the angelic realm, and all of our higher selves, and that which is Mother, Father, God, our creator. The big message is your words matter. Choose your words wisely. Understand the power of your words, because that is what we have in this realm. And tune into the energy of the words when you are saying them and when other humans are saying them, coming back at you. What is that person? What are you really trying to say? What is the intention behind the words? And a lot of times people use words and their intention is completely different. Their words may actually be to manipulate you, but the words coming out of their mouth are sugar sweet. Or their words may actually be to try to connect with you, but if they're not good at using words, if they're not skilled at using words, they may jumble them all up and say the wrong thing when actually their intentions are good. So what Spirit is saying right now is the way that we learn to become more telepathic is by focusing on the energy behind the words and starting to school ourselves in that. Okay, so take a deep breath. Focus on your heart chakra and open it to the light, to the Reiki energy, and ask that which is divine light and love to come in as I chant the Reiki symbols and begin to awaken you to the next part of your path to help you clear and purify any areas of your life that will bring you back into a higher alignment with your higher self, and to provide you with the clarity and the focus to move towards your true purpose that you came here to inhabit in this incarnation. Chakra, chakra, chakra. Breathe. Seiki, seiki, seiki. Breathe. Honsha ze shonen, honsha ze shonen, honsha ze shonen. Breathe. Daikomio, daikomio, daikomio. Breathe. Raku, raku, raku. Breathe. Merkafakalishma, merkafakalishma, merkafakalishma. Breathe. Go deeper into a soft place of relaxation, a gentle opening, and a peaceful harmony through your mind, body, thoughts, emotions, personality, aura. So I'm going to go back to the beginning of the story of this journey of mine with Agu, the High Priest from Telos. It started about a year ago when I was creating a meditation room in my home. And I was moving things around, taking things out, cleaning things, putting things in the room. And I had this desire to bring up this poster of this particular person and put it in the room. But my husband and I were not really interested in making this room about, our fascination with music and live music. It was supposed to be a meditation room. So it was going to be crystals and candles and spiritual books and meditation mats and our oracle cards and all of that kind of things. And I just didn't want to turn it into a rock and roll room per se. But still, there was this attraction that I could not fight to bring this particular poster up. So I did. And that day I was actually doing a lot of moving of furniture, moving of books. It was very tiring and exhausting, and the room was just a jumbled mess of like piles of this and piles of that. But once I brought the poster up, I just then was like, well, why don't I put on their music? And I did, and I played it for hours and hours and hours while I was putting together this meditation room, which is kind of interesting. Actually, honestly, I'm just making the connection right now that was the beginning of this particular person coming through as a guide for me. Like, he was trying to show me in that moment, like, I'm in the meditation room with you. Like, I'm here, I'm showing up, I'm trying to really make my energy strong for you to notice me because I want to come through to you. And trust me when I say to you that even though I am a psychic medium and I've had all kinds of light beings, angels, loved ones of my own and other people's loved ones come through to me, even after 5 or plus years of doing this, I still have those human little doubts of, is this really happening? And even though the messages are so clear and the synchronicities that it's almost laughable that I would still doubt myself. I do, because that is just part of our humanness to think I can't possibly be doing this. And of course, to be thinking I can't possibly be talking to this person that I really admired as a creative, famous person, not because he was famous, but I can't possibly be talking to a famous person. This is crazy. I'm making this up. So the story goes deeper. So I didn't think that much of it that day, except that I really did feel very drawn to listen to his music in a different kind of way that day while I was putting together this meditation room, though I wasn't really thinking about that in the moment, like I said. But when I went to bed that night, he showed up at my bedside. So these are the kind of things that happen when you are a psychic medium, and you can't always control them. Like when I do a reading for someone, I will say to them, if they say to me, I would like a loved one to come through, of course I will ask, and I will say most of the time it does happen. Maybe not always in the capacity or the message that they want to hear. Most of the time people are thrilled that a loved one comes through, but they would like for the message to be more extensive. Or there's a part of the message maybe they wanted to hear that they didn't hear. But the truth is, spirit in all of its forms will always show up exactly how you need it to show up for what you need to open and work on in that particular moment. Because spirit knows not to overwhelm you. And sometimes we get to where we want to through little baby steps before that. There's other things that have to fall into place, into line, before you can get to perhaps releasing shame or grief or guilt or any of those lower emotions. So that's a whole other story, and I'll save that for another podcast. What I have found over time is to just stay present and trust whatever is happening in the moment. Try not to jump ahead and ask a lot of questions. I have many times had spirit guides say to me, you're asking too many questions. And I'll say, well, my client would like to know this or that, or they want to hear this or that. And that's just not how it works. So I have learned, because they will just say to me, shh, listen, watch, witness what we're showing you in this shamanic vision as you're doing Reiki or a reading with someone. And in the end, it is always something that I or my client is able to piece together and understand, I see why it came through that way. So I woke up in the middle of the night and I felt a presence near the bed. And it was very strong. So sometimes I will try to go back to sleep, because I try to keep some sort of control on this. Otherwise, my entire life would be spent in other realms and not in my human form doing what I came to do as Sherry in this lifetime. But it's very hard to send spirit away. They will try to get their message through as best that they can. I have tried to say to them, no, I'm going back to sleep now. Come and talk to me in the morning when I'm having my coffee. And most of the time that doesn't work, but, so I just will not be able to sleep. So I will have to sit up and listen to what it is they're trying to tell me or show me. So in this case, I started to feel and sense a tall man coming into my third eye vision. Did I actually see him in my room? No, but I felt him. I believe that's called clairsentient. I sensed him standing by the bed, but I really saw him in my third eye because he was in a faraway dimension. To me, that's how it felt, because there's kind of a veil between the dimensions, which makes them feel far away. They're really not. It's really about us letting down our guard. But he was dressed in a long one-piece pleated white garment, very completed, very structured, very crisp, very ironed. That's a weird way to say it, but it was perfection, you know. It wasn't flowing. It had a form to it. And I absolutely sensed a lot of blue light around him. And then in my sleepy state, I actually realized who he was. Like, he showed up in his human form, even though that's not what he looks like, as a high priest that works with the whales in the underworld city of Telos. But he needed to show me how I knew him. Otherwise, I wouldn't understand who he was. So that's how I saw him. And so, of course, I said to him, why are you here? Like, I was starting to put the pieces together now. And he said, I want to tell you that what I do now is that I work with the whales. And he did not say to me that he was a high priest. He just said, I work with the whales. And I then heard my own spirit guide team say to me, he is a high priest. And that's when they told me where he was residing at this point on the other side of the veil. And honestly, I was astonished. I was not quite sure what was happening. I was again thinking, am I dreaming? Even though I was laying awake in bed, I was thinking, is this really happening? Why is this happening? You know, I went into all of my analytical, ego-based thinking. And that's really all I remembered that night. I then fell back into a deep sleep. And when I woke up in the morning, I was looking at this piece of art that I created because I do spirit energy art, which if you're ever interested in that, I do original artwork for people, personal one-on-one for your energy needs. And it's in my dreamalittle.designs.etsy.com shop. So you can also see my links for my Reiki services. I do distance Reiki and card readings. All of those are in the podcast link, as well as my overall podcast story link. If you're ever interested, you can contact me. My email is runningonreiki@gmail.com. So when I woke up, I was sleepy-eyed and I was remembering what happened. And I was just laying there looking at this piece of art that I had done, which was a tree of life with Eve in the Garden of Eden. And it's very abstract the way that I paint. And I was just looking at it, and then I heard him say, I came to you because I want you to create a piece of art for you and your husband, and I want you to paint yourselves floating with the whales and do it the same way you did this art. So my husband and I had been at a pinnacle moment when this happened of working on some things within our marriage. And I started to understand that this high priest was coming through to me because he was trying to, amongst other things, assist us with bringing more balance into our marriage. Two things that I want to clarify, though. I realized that I said that Telos was an underworld city, and that's really not the correct term. It's more inner world. If you're not familiar with that, briefly, a lot of people believe that there is a inner world civilization. Now, you know, the rational mind would say, how could any beings or animals of any form, plant life, live inside the earth, which we all know scientifically is proven to have a very hot core. But you have to understand that there are beings that live in the inner world of the earth, and Telos is considered one of those very high frequency spiritual cities. It's a working city, a real city. And it is in there, but it's not, it's again, it's in a different dimension. It's behind the veil. So no, it does not exist within the heat and the magma of the inner core of the earth. It's really just about expanding your perception of things, because the spiritual world and the scientific world actually do intersect, but not really in the way that we like to think that they do, or the way that we like to compartmentalize them. They can exist simultaneously, I guess, is what I'm hearing. Also, when I said that this high priest showed up at my bedside and he was surrounded in blue light, what I also want to make you understand is that although I had heard of Telos, I didn't really know that much about it. Like, as somebody who likes to do a lot of extensive reading about spiritual topics, I had heard about it, but it was like one of those words that lingers, and there's something like, I need to look into that. It resonates with me, but I don't know why, and you just never make the time to do it. So when he came to me and said, when my guide said to me that he was a high priest and he existed in the realm of Telos, I, of course, started reading about Telos, bought a book on it, started Googling it, and this is when I understood that Telos is actually a city where Lemurian beings existed. So when the continent of Lemuria, which is one of the most ancient civilizations on planet Earth, actually came to an end, many of those beings crossed through a veil and went to live in the inner world city inside Gaia, Mother Earth, of Telos. And there's also another city supposedly called Shambhala. Also, what I read and learned as I started to explore more about Telos and Lemuria was that the frequency of these beings is a blue light. And again, I did not know that before this high priest showed up surrounded in a blue light at my bedside, explaining that he now resided in Telos. So these are the ways that we connect the dots. And you have to really be, a hawk about it. You have to have a bird's eye and always be looking at everything. Never disregard anything that's happening in your dreams, in your life, thoughts, imaginings, visions, little ideas that pop in your head when you're reading something and something stands out, something in a song, something somebody says to you. Every single thing is like another little part of the puzzle when you're looking to put together, why is this particular thing, situation happening in my life at this particular time? In my opinion, there is no such thing as randomness in this universe. This universe is so beautifully designed right down to every little detail. And it's all like a snowflake. Have you ever seen a close-up picture of a snowflake? It's so incredibly delicate and detailed and intricate and fascinating. It's like its own little universe because it is its own little universe. So life is not random. When we think life is random, our way we are in the world becomes random because we just think everything is happening to us, coming at us, when in truth, the design has already been laid out and we are living it out. But it's all happening, it appears to be happening in this moment, but it's a timeless moment. It's a all-encompassed moment. Even when it doesn't feel like you're on your path, it's because you actually designed it to not be on your path in that moment because of the wisdom and the learnings that you will get from it. Okay, so because I'm able to actually record this podcast in segments, I'm on day 2 of recording, and after a good night's sleep, I'm remembering some other parts of this beautiful story. So I pulled out my journal because this was many months ago that this whole process started, actually probably almost a year ago. And I'm noting here that I had written down that when this high priest came to me in the middle of the night and I realized who he was, he also said to me, I work with the whales, but what I wrote in my journal is that he said, I am of the blue beings and I work with the blue whales. So again, that goes back to the fact that then after doing research on Telos and him telling me he was from there, that I discovered that that frequency of those beings is of the blue light. The other interesting thing that started to happen after I had the vision of him, but before I did reading and understood that they were associated with the blue light, is that I like to run. I'm a trail runner, which is why I've created this podcast and called it Running on Reiki, because the two things that I do fuel or run on in my life personally that raises my vibration is trail running outside and Reiki are a huge, huge part of my life. But what started to happen after this first experience was when I go out running, I love to take pictures of Mother Nature because that is the other thing that I absolutely cannot live without if I want to stay in a balanced state. And I noticed when I would come home and look at my pictures that all of these blue orbs were showing up. Now, I'm not talking about camera reflection orbs because we kind of all know what those are. You know, showing up in random parts of the picture, rather large blue orbs. And I thought, well, that's interesting. I mean, I have had orbs show up in some of my pictures before, but never blue orbs and never as frequently as it was happening. So then when I started to read and I understood about the Lemurians and Telos, I understood that because I had opened a portal by speaking to this high priest, I was on that frequency. So I was able to see those beings. They were showing up for me in orbs is one way, or the dream state, you know, that spiritual beings from another dimension are able to come through to us because Mother Nature has a very high frequency. So sometimes we're able to capture those pictures when we're out in nature. Those pictures, I mean, the orbs show up in the pictures because you're photographing something that is of a very high frequency. And if you are in a high frequency state, you're hiking, walking, running, boating, whatever in nature, anytime that we raise both our frequency and we put ourselves in physical locations that have a high frequency, we are more able to connect with spirit. So think about that in the sense that when you keep your vibration low in your life by doing things that are toxic to the body, to the mind, to the emotions, it's hard for you to feel connected to spirit. And that's why people often on a spiritual awakening journey will say to you, you know, man your vibration, keep your vibration high. And sometimes people get a little annoyed by that because they think, well, you know, I'm living a real life and I have real problems here. You know, I don't want to be told to just think positive all the time and keep my vibration high. I can't force myself to do that. That is correct. But it also does not make it untrue that if you find your personal way to keep your vibration high, you will live a more peaceful, balanced, joyful life. The other really fascinating thing that happened is that because I read oracle cards, after he came through to me, I decided the next day or a few days after that to pull an oracle card to just try to channel him to see what would come through. And I decided to use a Lemurian deck. And the card that I pulled had a being on it that was blue, and the face on the being looked like the face of a whale. So again, that was clarity that it was actually him that had come through to me, and the things that he had said were actually that I had heard them correctly. The words on that oracle card said unique gifts. And he said to me that one of the reasons he was coming through to me was because he wanted to help encourage my poetic writings and to let me know that I was supported. And again, that's really interesting because as I'm actually doing this podcast, I'm sitting in my house and I'm alone. It's the middle of the day and I can feel him all around me. Like the house is making little clicky noises and I could just feel the energy in the room of him kind of pacing about. It's so interesting. But, again, don't let your mind tell you that things are not real. That, because somebody is famous. Now, if you are only having famous people come through to you, there might be an issue there. But if a worldly famous person comes through to you, whether it be Einstein, it doesn't have to be a musician, whatever, Cleopatra, whatever. Don't go right to doubt, let yourself fall into it. What harm is it going to do to just witness and pay attention and see what the message in it might be? I'm going to read some of the things that I wrote in my journal. This was what I heard after I pulled that card of the blue whale being after he showed up in the vision. And what he was telling me, I wrote, is that he tried to use words. Remember, we were talking about, I forgot I even wrote this in my journal, but remember in the beginning of this podcast, I was getting a lot of guidance about words. So this makes sense now. And I wrote, he was telling me that he used words and music to try to tell the galactic story of our origin and our truth. And speaking to me, he said, and you use art and words and poetry. And that he was encouraging me to be more brave now and to put my contributions out into the world. He was telling me that it was time, and he was grateful that I saw him the way I did. And I did. From the first time that I saw him, I was mesmerized by his charisma and his ability to express. And then I wrote here that I asked him at the time why he was working with the whales. And he said that the whales are the primary beings that ground and center the earth through the ocean waters. That they are galactic beings, that they are immense, big, heavy, safe protection energy. They are the dragons of the sea, he told me. That they watch over the ley lines, the energetic lines within the planet through the ocean. And he said that he takes deep pride in his work as a high priest working with the whales. He told me that he died fairly young because his work was done here on Earth and he could only do so much light work through rock and roll and the human ego. And that he was very successful at incorporating the codes, the messages of the light. And he liked the challenge when he was here of getting the light codes into the music. But that he was ready for expansion into a fuller, more all-encompassing potential of self. There was so much bursting energy in him, he said to me, and it was very hard to contain it. That he had a lot to give and a lot to say and a lot to express and a lot to share, but it was still limited in being able to do it in human form, even though as an artist, as a writer, as a musician, he had more leeway than most people do, more freedom to be able to do that. He said that it was very hard to interpret the messages coming from spirit, and maybe he didn't always understand where they were coming from, but he tried to receive them and put them into words. But it got tiresome in the human form because it felt like he never quite could capture it the way that it was moving through his body, through his energy, through his mind. He's saying right now that he was very cerebral, very, very much a thinker, an analyzer, a philosopher. And he told me that now, as he works with the whales, he's able to work on a different level, which is with sound and vibration, and he doesn't have the frustration of creating words, which is, he loved words in human form, but he was also frustrated by them. So there was always that duality. There always is that duality in human form. I have to be honest that I did forget that I had written all of this in my journal. And so now I'm completely understanding why at the beginning of this podcast, I was getting all this message from Spirit about words and the importance of our words and learning to work with the intentions and the energy behind our words and other people's words. This completely ties in to what I wrote in here, going on 9 months ago. So, the spiritual lessons, they always expand. And that's why journaling is so important, because we forget. I know I do. So many things happen in a day's time. I forget to, link them. And journaling helps you do that. So here's another even more just magical part of this story. So because I did follow this person and his music, I did know that he was very much interested in advocacy, especially for the lakes and the cleanliness, of the environment of the lakes. And he did a lot of raising of awareness of that, as well as raising money to support that. But I really didn't, other than one song that I knew of his, did not really think that he had a huge connection to the ocean so much as the lakes. I mean, of course, the lakes and the oceans are connected, but so after he came through to me, of course, I scoured all of his songs to see if there was anything specific about whales, because I did not remember any songs about whales, maybe one song about the ocean. And what I found absolutely blew my mind, and again, made me realize, okay, I am not crazy. He really did come through to me. All of what he's telling me really is true. What I found by doing a lot of research was this obscure part of a song that one time when he performed it live, he went off on a little bit of a rant and started telling this long story about this killer whale. And the deviation that he did that day, which also made me new when I first used to watch him and listen to him and go see him, these little deviations where he would change the lyrics of the song on the spot and turn it into this beautiful, sometimes rhythmic actually rhyming poem that would just like capture your heart and your soul. And you would think, how can he just do this on the spot? It was so clear that Spirit was channeling through him. So this little rare excerpt that I found, again, didn't know any of this until after he appeared to me, was about this conversation, this dialogue that he made up on the spot in concert on stage about this relationship between a man and a killer whale. And it was about a human man falling into a killer whale tank at a aquarium, and the interaction between the whale and the man. And it was very outlandish and eccentric, and ended with the killer whale, if I remember correctly, like biting the man's arm off. Now, I know that doesn't sound very spiritual, but I'm tuning in now and asking him, like, what was the deeper meaning of that? And he's saying, in the moment, it was just about rock and roll eccentricness. But the deeper meaning is about man fearing and projecting his fear onto things outside of him, blaming things outside of him for things not going right in his life, because man is not connected to his own inner nature. So he feels like the human world, is gobbling him up. And he's saying right now that I kind of wish, though we should never wish away anything that we do, because everything is a lesson. But in the moment, it was about being a little outlandish on stage and telling a story that would draw people's attention. I know now that there was a deeper meaning, but I could see how it would look like I was just being dramatic for drama's sake. I was using the whale as a metaphor for the way of living where we are always looking outside ourselves for bigger things, or being scared of the largeness of life. And the real beauty of that story is that the man went into the tank that he went in to face his fears, to face the largeness of life. Because the whales, which represent life and life force energy, are not here to overwhelm us, even though it may seem that way on a planet where we experience so much denser, lower, heavier energies, and on a planet where we do experience fear in all of its forms. We come to face our fears. We come to live large, even amongst them. We come to dive deep. We come to survive, the bites, the abuses, the losses, the pain, the suffering. Okay, so here's another really amazing part of this continuing interaction that I'm having with this high priest. Recently, I know what it was. I wasn't looking at pictures of him or looking up pictures, but of course I follow his social media pages, and I don't know who runs them, but they're still posting pictures. And in my news feed, it just came up one day, a photograph of him that I had never seen before. And in this photograph, I nearly fell off my couch. He was wearing a t-shirt with a picture of a large whale on it. And out of the whale's mouth was a caption that said, "Save the humans." I could probably do another 3 episodes on just that alone. Just wow, 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 wow moment. Again, here was clarity that what he told me, that he's working with the whales now, is true. And I just love this idea that it's not, we as humans think that we are on some kind of hierarchy where we're at the top of the hierarchy and we are saving the whales, when the truth is what he was trying and knew all along on a deeper level, probably not when he was wearing that t-shirt as a human. Maybe there's more connections of him and the whales that I am yet to discover. But there was a deeper part of his consciousness that knew he was meant and would be working with the whales. And that's why he was drawn. That's why any of us are drawn to a t-shirt that we wear or a book that we read or a song that we listen to or whatever it is. And the fact is that, he knew that the whales are actually saving us, which is what he told me when he came through to me. Again, I'm trying to tell this story in succinct timeline here so that you understand that I am connecting the dots as I go along. I'd have to be pretty nutty and actually probably pretty intelligent to just make this entire story up. It's unfolding. It's still unfolding. And I feel that I may be doing further podcasts with him because I think there's a lot that he has to say and teach us and me. Okay, so now backtracking back to my journal that I wrote. This is when I channeled him the first time after he came to me in the vision. This was, like I said, the next morning or a couple of days later, I was awake. So I was able to write down everything he was telling me. And I remember I was writing this down feverishly, but I did forget that I wrote this much. So here is where he started to talk about the whales and the water. And he said, let me see where I am here. "I work with sound and vibration now. Again, no frustrating words. And oh gosh, I thought that the words were so beautiful and oh so human, and I am not disparaging them. But right now I am at great peace working with the whales. I did sing of the water often. And if you go and look at my songs a little closer, you will see there was many times that I sang of the water, the rivers, the lakes, the ocean. And the reason why is because water is buoyancy and escapism of the highest order." And he said, "I am home in the water. I always felt at home in the water or near the water." He also wanted to talk a little bit at that time about the body and moving the body, because he was a performer who moved around the stage and did a lot of movements and motions and metaphors with his body. And he said, when you're in form, the body is the greatest gift. The body of the greatest gift is to move. So many do not partake in the moving of the body, to jiggle, to pose, to jump, to dance. I had to do it. I was worried in the beginning how it would look, but I could no longer contain it. There were codes and upgrades for the audience in the moves that I did. And although they may have seemed silly or nonsensical, I just knew that I had to do them. He said at the time he did not know that there were codes in what he was doing. He just knew that he had to move his body in that way. He talked about how to express yourself through body movements is such a primal root chakra need. And that in a sense, as he was dancing and moving and gyrating for himself on stage, he was also doing it for everybody in the audience. And he called it the dance of life. He said, I did the dance of life that many couldn't or wouldn't. And then he talked about how so much of what humans do is through how we process energy is through osmosis, through others' music, others' poetry, others' dance, others' photography. But he said it's so important to find your own way to move and be creative, because when you find your own, and these were his words, quirky, nutty thing, that is when the magic of your life begins. Okay, so I just found a passage in my journal about after I read those additional lyrics that I was just talking about a little bit back. So let's see if what I wrote almost a year ago matches up to what I just channeled now. I didn't know I'd forgotten I'd written this, like I said. Let's see here. Okay, so I just discovered a little rant in the middle of a song that he did live about a man who cleaned the inside of a killer whale tank. And in the rant, the whale eats the arm of the man who loves him and cleans his tank out of boredom. The whale eats the man's arm out of boredom. And then I wrote, very violent, chaotic, ego-based, but I'm sure it was a metaphor for this singer about how humans destroy themselves, others, and the planet over laziness, boredom, need for drama, pain, and misery. The whale was probably tired of being encased in a tank instead of in his natural habitat of the ocean. The deeper meaning, when we are forced to do something controlled for others' gain and amusement, we will snap over time because we are meant to be free. Very interesting. And what I'm hearing right now in this moment is that the rant was a merging of the whale and the male. Thank you, Spirit. And that when we cage ourselves, when we try to go against our true nature, our true wild nature, when we hold ourselves back, we will eventually break out of that tank, of that cave, of that cage, because we cannot hold back the depth of the subconscious ocean. We have to be vigilant every day, to be working on processing our shadows and working through our karma, which is the energy of our shadows that has built up. It's a spiritual ascension journey to do that work. So many, many layers there. And I'm sure what I'm hearing right now is that you don't have to figure it all out and be able to dictate it for people. Whoever's going to listen to this episode it's going to have different meanings for different people. The whole whale, killer whale, gentle man, killer man metaphor analogy, because it's on a continuum, and there's so much wisdom there. And the listener will know what it means for their life in this moment. The other interesting thing I'm reading in my journal is that when I eventually started to do research on light beings from Telos, that many other people have channeled that when these light beings appear to them, especially if you go to Mount Shasta in the state of Washington and do the various hikes and connections around there to meditate with Telos, which is below Mount Shasta, that when people go there, they will often have visions of the Telos light beings, and the way that they appear is in a white, crisp, tailored, pleated robe. And that's exactly what I saw before I knew anything about Telos in my night vision. So again, more clarification. So in my journal, it also says that on another day when I was meditating, he came through to me again in a awake vision. And he took me on this walk along this just beautiful, breathtaking path. And the path was made of all these large, like radiating crystals on both sides. Light just rippling off these crystals. There was a pond, and he smiled very lovely. I met him at this pond before this walk, and there was this sparkling water, and then I noticed him on the other side of the pond, and he was smiling at me. He rocked around, and then we started to walk together on this path. And the crystals were large, like trees. They were growing up from the ground, and there was so much light and energy vibrating around and off of them, and this feeling of pure health, this feeling that everybody wants of pure health and vitality. And he pointed to a waterfall that just appeared out of nowhere, and it was very tall and rushing down and out of a mountain. And in the vision, he touched my heart and he said, "You are as the waterfall, fury and beauty. Let it rush and release it now." And then he activated a symbol above my head, and I wrote that it looked like a DNA strand, like what we all know what that looks like from images. And it was right above my crown chakra, and it felt like it was activating my crown chakra. And later that day, I pulled an oracle card and asked, why did he come to me today in that vision? And the card that I pulled was a crown chakra oracle card. So again, that was confirmation from my guide saying to me, he did come to activate something within your crown chakra to open you more to your gifts, to your connection to spirit. Okay, so let's take a deep breath. And I'm going to bring this into present real time right now, because I've given you the backstory, and I'm going to see what else he wants me to say today, as far as why he's showing up. One of the things that he's saying, and actually he's laughing a little bit and smirking, is that because I'm such a avid, have such an avid ability to describe life, more than likely, many people who listen to this can probably guess who he was in real life. And he's saying that's okay. He knows that it's hard to tell the story without the details. And he was all about the details. He's also saying that he was also very much about mystery, and that his song lyrics were very, they weren't straightforward. They were very poetic for a reason, because he enjoyed the play of the mystery and the idea that every single person who listened could take away something very different from his lyrics, and that life itself is very mysterious. So he's enjoying, with a little bit of a chuckle, the idea that I'm trying to be mysterious about his identity, because he's saying he enjoyed being mysterious about what he was really trying to say. And the reason why is because he wasn't trying to outwardly teach or preach anything to anyone. And that was the way to live. That is the way to live. That is the higher wisdom. He's saying only you have your answers. Only you create the meaning of the pieces of your life. And you could actually explain it with limited human words to somebody else, but they still will interpret it through their filter. So that's why words are so very challenging to work with. And he's bringing it back to the whales now, and he's saying that the whales, words are large like whales. He's saying use them, enjoy them, express them, but don't get so caught up in words and give them too much meaning that they end up biting off your arm. So, he's bringing it full circle there. There's so much meaning and depth to words. And he's pointing out, he's showing me the dictionary now. So, like when you look up a word meaning and you're like, oh, it can mean this or it can mean this. And it could be two totally different things if that word is both a verb and a noun. It's fascinating. He's saying the mystery of words is fascinating. So work with your words, but don't let your words take over. Don't let them be the taskmaster. Play with them. Be curious, but always focus on the energy behind the words. The other enlightenment that he's sharing is to never try to tell other people what their words mean. In other words, when somebody is saying something to you and you say to them, no, that's not true. I think this is what you're really trying to say. He's saying to me that those are very detrimental things to communication, that we have to allow other people their words and we have to allow ourselves our words, and to try not to spend too much time or energy thinking that we know exactly what the words mean. He's saying that the ability to use language and words is one of the most biggest draws for people coming back to planet Earth, saying, okay, I will incarnate and go back to planet Earth again. Because in higher dimensions, there are no words. There's just telepathic expression. And words can cause a lot of trouble, but they are just endlessly fascinating to the creator being part of us, to be able to come here and have the capacity, especially, he's saying, if you are a poet or a writer or a novelist or a songwriter, the idea to be able to come here and play with words is just a magnificent draw. So I'm going to close today, and I think that there was just a wealth of reservoirs of guidance, and I know myself will want to listen to this again. I'm so grateful to be able to channel spirit messages like this. I'm grateful that I finally have come to a place of accepting that it's happening to me and that I'm sharing it with other people. And I do know that there will be people that think it's wrong or it's crazy or I'm making it up, and that's okay. I'm actually in a place where I know that if I can reach and help one person, that truly is all that matters by using my words. And maybe my words aren't perfect and maybe I'm not saying them exactly how I should, but my intention in sharing what I share as far as my spiritual journey is not to dictate to you how to believe, but just to open you to your own spiritual journey and really the belief in your own spiritual journey, and that I'm not special and that people that channel or have psychic abilities are not special. We actually all have this capacity. Mine didn't really open up entirely until I was in my early 40s. So, and it was through Reiki that happened for me. It will not always be that way for everybody else. Everybody's journey is going to be different, but I put myself out there and try to be courageous and have courage so that other people can have courage and that we all can start to step out from behind that curtain of pretending and actually become, that front man on the stage, that front woman, and stand in our own power and potentiality, because it is so immense. And it took me a long time to believe in it for myself. And because I do now do that, I want to find a way through everything that I do, my art, offering Reiki sessions and readings, and now this podcast. I also have a YouTube channel, which is called Running on Reiki, Instagram Running on Reiki, and this podcast is called Running on Reiki, and my TikTok is called Running on Reiki. So these are all places that I try to show up every day, and I'm looking to just be a good soul that's trying to connect people to their own good soul. So I want to thank this guide, this high priest, for everything that he has given me in my life from the first time that I discovered him. And as I continue this journey with him, I really could cry right now because I am so grateful for the ways that he has opened me to the creative life and to self-love. And thank you. Thank you to him for showing up for me and for all of us today. Okay, so that's a close for today. And if you're going to hang out on this podcast, you're going to hear some real-time tears every once in a while. And I'm not going to apologize for that, because the only way we're going to shift the planet into a new earth mentality and way of living is if we all show up as we are in the moment, and we accept our emotions, and we express our feelings and our voice, and we love and allow and accept each other through all of that, no matter where we are at in the present moment, and know that we are all doing the best that we can. So thank you for joining this Running on Reiki podcast. And if you would be interested in booking a one-on-one session with me, I do distance Reiki anywhere in the world, as energy has no boundaries, especially divine energy. So you can reach me at runningonreiki@gmail.com. You can check out and learn more, read reviews, and how I practice on my Dream a Little Reiki Wix site webpage, which is all about my Reiki and readings. And you can check out my energy spirit art at dreamalittledesigns.etsy.com. And all of my links are in the show notes. So signing off today, sending you deep, deep, oceans deep love, peace, and well wishes. Blessings. My name is Sherry. I'm a light worker, psychic medium, and Reiki master. And this is Running on Reiki.